Hi, I wanted to read a short excerpt of chapter 12 of my book. It's called SPECKS. It's about waking up from a coma. I was paddling up from where I was stuck in a bogged down place. I kept going even though I was trudging through quicksand, and then I broke through to consciousness. My eyelids started bouncing. I became aware of a large black numeral 2, and it was floating. I thought I was dead and in a Dali painting that I'd seen in my library book. But no, because aches and pains and smells were here, and that couldn't happen in dreams. I glimpsed my physical self. I was in a bed under good quality linen. I considered I might be dreaming, but there was a clarity I couldn't ignore. You can't smell stuff in sleep, can you? But that number 2 was hovering like a spacecraft, and something was wrong with my eyes. Edges of everything were indistinct, blurry, and every single thing was white. I blinked and blinked. My eyelids felt like they hadn't been used in a while. I tried to command the 2 into focus. It was apparently on a white wall above a bed across from me. A gray head stuck out from rumpled blankets in that bed under the 2. My peripheral vision was working. I looked sideways. Specks of colors were there. I knew what they were, and they made me happy. The specks were my mother. "You really cleaned your system out," said a male voice. "Do you recall getting your stomach pumped?" asked a woman. I shook my head. It was like my head didn't belong to me, so I shook it pretty slowly. "Coma. One lucky girl," said the male. "Well, you did get your stomach pumped. Do you remember vomiting?" I shook my head. There was vomit involved? Well, I was only 13, and I thought that drinking might help with my oddness, might help me to speak. "Well, I'll tell you what you said to the paramedics, but it would embarrass you," said my aunt. "We had never heard you say the F word before." I had no memory of that. "Paramedics?" I said, numbly. I remembered none of that. I was angry that a piece of my life had elapsed and I'd not been cognizant. "Did she ever swear?" said my aunt. I noticed now that a white blanket covered my body, which was speaking to me in aches, telling me it felt like it had the flu. My throat was raw and sore, and my head was woozy. My brain reminded me of vodka, and I didn't believe it at first, that vodka could do this horrible thing to my 13-year-old body, but I knew it was true. I could taste the liquor, and I could smell it. I turned my head to the left with concern. My head felt like a bruised rotten fruit that would cave in. Smiling, my aunt was there, and she smiled even brighter. I looked to the right, and there was the person I had seen in my peripheral, my mother. She was wearing the specs. Her eyes were moist and bloodshot, the skin around them creped with creases. She was saying, "She's awake! She's awake!" It was our shirt she was wearing. I tried to smile at its wonderful presence. I wondered if she'd worn it on purpose. On one shopping trip we'd bought identical shirts in each of our sizes. It was white with vertical textural ribbing, and colorful dots were splashed all over the shirt. If you looked closely, you saw they were bold, multicolored threads tied in knobby knots. I inhaled deeply and let it out mightily. I noticed 2 men, my father and my uncle, talking to a doctor. Then everybody noticed my open eyes and came at me, nurses and doctors, clipboards and pens waving, all excited and spouting words. If they overwhelmed me, I was apt to not hear them at all. I would somehow need to stare and focus on a pattern or thing, but there was really nothing other than the numeral 2 above the bed across from me. The words were already spiraling out and down the drain. I wasn't going to be able to say anything. I breathed deeply, the pillow's scent. When my cheek brushed against it, it was a more favorable scent than that of the clammy sweat and liquor that emanated from all of my pores. I was still shaking my head about the swearing because I couldn't believe it was true. I had no memory. Then my aunt and mother said in unison, "Oh, yes, you did." I was ashamed they said I swore. I was ashamed I stank. I wanted to brush my teeth, and I managed to say so. Everybody said, "Sure." I was also ashamed, I might add, that I'd had to go to such lengths to try to be like everybody else.